Greetings and welcome to the Failure-Free Reading Refresher course. This course will be used to help tutors become more familiar with the Failure-Free Reading program and also to prepare them to help parents help their students become more successful in reading. Some of the things that we'll review during this refresher course are the history of the Failure-Free Reading program. We'll talk about the target population that Failure-Free Reading serves. We'll review the Failure-Free Reading methodology. We'll talk about how implementation works, and then we'll discuss some key points that will help your tutoring business become more successful. Failure-Free Reading is a non-phonic reading intervention designed to help your hardest-to-reach students develop an ability to read with full fluency and comprehension. The program was founded in 1988 by Dr. Joseph Lackovich. Dr. Lackovich is a former school psychologist, university professor, classroom teacher, special education director. He's also an applied researcher and a great public speaker. Here's a quote from one of Dr. Lackovich's most recent interviews. As a former classroom teacher and special education director, I had students who simply defied the highly effective reading approaches that worked with my other students. No matter what program I tried, they still failed. Dr. Lackovich classified this group of students as chronic non-responders and went to work developing a research-based solution that could support the needs of these students. Chronic non-responders can be defined as students who have not shown even marginal progress with conventional interventions, students who continue to fall further and further behind, students who continue to test in the bottom half of the bottom percentiles on measures of fluency, word recognition, and reading comprehension. In terms of where they fall in America's low literacy umbrella, chronic non-responders are those students testing 0 to 15th percentile. They are considered testing 4-plus grade levels behind with little to no history of success in reading. They fall into the categories of mild autism, emotionally handicapped, mild mentally handicapped, learning disabled, speech, language, hearing impaired, ELL, ESL, remediation resistors, and alternative education. Now, it's important to note here that, yes, failure-free reading absolutely was designed for the lowest of the low students, those students who are not responding positively to other reading approaches. However, failure-free reading can be effective for students that are working at higher reading levels. We have a variety of resources that are available to help all students. So, in the interest of sharing this resource with parents, don't limit the use of failure-free reading to just chronic non-responders. It's just important to understand that there are a lot of great programs out there that can help students that are having a little bit of trouble with reading. Failure-free reading is that resource for students that are considered non-readers or severely struggling readers. We're going to talk briefly about 3 characteristics of chronic non-responders. Number 1 is PD, which stands for phonetically deaf. These students are born with a 10 ear for sound. They show very little to no success with phonics-based interventions. They need an alternative to a skills-first approach, and they tend to be visual learners. ED stands for environmentally denied. These students have been limited in exposure to academic language. They oftentimes get little to no academic support at home, and it refers to families that are limited in financial resources for tutoring or for unique life experiences. Some of these students rarely get an opportunity to leave their neighborhoods. They haven't traveled across country. They haven't had a lot of great opportunities to see what's out there. Some of these students have never left their local community. We're based in Concord, North Carolina. There are some students who have never left Concord to go to Charlotte, which is a neighboring metropolitan city. All right, the third characteristic is LD, that stands for language deprived. Many chronic non-responders come from homes where standard English is not always spoken. These can be referred to as your ELL students, students that are exposed to very little academic language. The Failure-Free Reading Program teaches your chronic non-responders to become automatic readers. And what we mean when we say automatic readers is that the brain is a resource that can only really focus on one function at a time. I know a lot of people, myself included, that are able to eat while driving. Now, I'm not saying that this is positive. I'm certainly not encouraging eating while driving. but a lot of people tend to think that they can focus on two things simultaneously, and that's not the case. One of the actions is automatic, and then the additional action requires some thought. So driving in and of itself becomes automatic once you become a proficient driver, and it opens the door for your brain to be able to focus on something else. It's not safe to do, but that's just an example of how brain function works and how an individual could have the ability to do more than one thing if one of the activities was automatic. So in the interest of helping students to become automatic readers, what we want them to be able to do is already have a foundation of vocabulary that they can automatically draw from. So when they see words in passages, they can focus more on the meaning of the passage and not struggle through the individual vocabulary words included in that passage. Okay. This is what we call the 4 steps to reading success, and Dr. Lakovich has identified that the foundation for reading success is language. And Failure-Free Reading is fortunate enough to work with not only hearing chronic non-responders, but we also work with a lot of schools for the deaf across the country. So listening isn't necessarily just listening with the ear. There are students in the deaf and hearing impaired population that hear with their eyes. But basically, we're observing what we see, and we're picking up on what we hear around us in order to develop a foundation of language, in order to develop a foundation of communication signals and ways to communicate information. From listening, whether it be with the ear or the eye, we move to vocabulary. So based on what we've observed and what we're being taught, we develop a base of vocabulary that creates the foundation for how we will communicate. Once we've developed that base of vocabulary, then we move on to reading passages and interpreting larger volumes of information being communicated, and then we move to expressing communication by writing that information and sharing our thoughts using written word. Researchers have identified 3 key bodies of academic English words specific to academic success. What we understand is that a student cannot read for meaning above their language level of comprehension. So vocabulary becomes critical. Language and vocabulary becomes a critical piece of helping students to become successful in reading. And we have taken a look at these 3 key bodies of academic words and identified their level of importance in helping students to develop that foundation. What you see here is 3 different levels of vocabulary. The first level, which represents the base of the pyramid or the foundation, is going to be your most common words. The second level is going to be Tier 2 words, and the third level is going to be rare words. Most common words represent the most frequently used vocabulary words in the English language. There are roughly 2,000 vocabulary words that, if mastered, would represent 90% of the vocabulary that students are going to see in reading from grades 1 to grades 9. Failure-Free Reading's elementary solution teaches 2,600 of the most frequently used vocabulary words. Tier 2 words are going to represent words that are more advanced. These are words that fall into a higher secondary level. These are transitioning out of middle school into high school vocabulary words. They are a little more subject specific, but still considered general vocabulary. And then the top of the pyramid, you're going to see rare words. Rare words are subject-specific words. They may be the language of social studies. It may be the words that are used most frequently associated with science or mathematics, finance or biology, medicine. These words are very specific to certain subject areas, and you're typically only going to see those words inside of that subject matter. Failure-Free Reading makes reading simple by reducing reading to its simplest form and controlling for abundant repetition, simple sentence structure, understandable story content. Okay? Students in our environment need to see vocabulary words 75 to 100 times at least in order to develop a healthy sense of the word, take ownership of the word, really make that word a part of their core vocabulary. Sentence structure needs to be simple. We must eliminate challenges such as idiomatic expressions, uncommon names, dates, and places. These are things that make reading challenging to the most advanced reader. So we really have to be aware of these challenges when we're presenting this information to our hardest-to-reach students. And lastly is going to be understandable story content. It has to be content that the students can relate to, and it needs to be age appropriate. We understand that there can be some benefits with using animation with younger students, but when we're talking about students that are really challenged and struggling with reading, they have to be able to associate that vocabulary with things that have taken place in their lives. They've got to be able to relate. Reading is relating. And it's hard to develop a relationship with imaginary characters and caricatures. It's easier to develop a relationship with real-life images and real-life ideas and content, things that students would actually have experienced or at least seen on television, something that they can relate to as a real-life experience. Okay? These are some of the important skill sets that need to be developed for chronic non-responders in order for them to have success in reading. We've talked about the need to increase vocabulary. Increasing fluency is very important. It's important for students to be able to hear and to see and to interpret how sentences flow. If a student struggles to read fluently, again, there's kind of that automatic reading component. If a student struggles to read fluently, then they're going to spend more time on fluency than understanding the overall picture that the passage is trying to communicate. We must improve comprehension, and a large part of improving comprehension goes back to developing that foundation of language, increasing a student's vocabulary base, and helping the student to build relationships with the vocabulary. They have to understand what it means, and they have to be able to have a relationship with the vocabulary in order to understand the words and how the words create an idea in the form of a sentence or a passage. Word recognition ability is important. Again, that's something else that failure-free reading is trying to make automatic for the student. We want to increase the student's reading volume rate. Reading by volume is a practice of stamina. The more a student reads and the more advanced or expanded text the student reads, the more they increase that reading volume stamina or that reading volume rate. And that's something that we want to be able to do with students through the use of the failure-free reading program. It will help students to improve their ability to test well because they won't be intimidated by the large volume of vocabulary words that appear in massive passages. And we want to improve student background knowledge. There are going to be some vocabulary words that students can't relate to because their sphere of influence has been limited. And we want to do whatever it is that we can do to help students build a stronger base of background knowledge around ideas, concepts, and vocabulary words that create those ideas. All right. Next are what I like to call the intrinsic values. We want to increase student time on task. If we increase students' time on task, then it means that they're getting more done that's related to academic activity. They're getting more done that's related to academic development. The opportunity for them to learn has expanded because they are spending more time focused on academic activity. Improving time on task will improve attitude and behavior because they'll be getting more accomplished, and their focused attention on instruction will result in a reduction of negative behavior and poor attitudes in the classroom. We want to increase confidence, and confidence is extremely important. Students tend to want to move forward on an activity when they feel confident that they can be successful. If they don't feel confident that they can be successful, they tend to shy away from it, and this is certainly true for our students who haven't had a lot of success academically. And lastly, we want to close the language and literacy gap. And one of the first things that we can do in order to make that happen is to develop that base of vocabulary, build that background knowledge, and help students relate to vocabulary. And then we want to expand their reading volume rate. We want to help expose them to larger amounts of text, give them the confidence that they can read those larger passages. And those are steps that we can take in order to bridge that gap. All right, we'll take a look now at how failure-free reading actually does it, what the instructional model looks like. The very first thing that students will do once you register them for the program is they're going to take what's called the diagnostic prescriptive. The diagnostic prescriptive is an initial assessment that's going to help us determine where the student is going to place inside of the failure-free reading program. The way that the diagnostic works is it's going to introduce students to fill in the blank sentences with multiple choice options. These sentences are going to increase in complexity as the student consistently answers questions correctly. When the student provides enough incorrect answers consecutively, the program will identify that grade level as the student's challenge or frustration level, and this is where the student will be placed to begin instruction. Once the student has completed the first component of the diagnostic, which is that initial assessment, the second portion of the diagnostic is going to be the pretest. The pretest is going to be based on whatever story or cluster the student was placed in, and it's going to be used to ensure appropriate placement and provide baseline data for evaluating student understanding of that current story. We have what we call a green flag feature in place for students who take the initial assessment and place into a story that's too low or not challenging enough. Challenge level or frustration level is extremely important for our program because we provide students with an abundance of repetition. The sentence structure is very simple and easy to navigate through with higher levels of more challenging vocabulary, the core vocabulary, the critical vocabulary. So we want to make sure that the students are always working instructionally at their challenge level, otherwise they'll get bored and they won't want to use the program. So boredom is the word that we fear the most. Challenge and challenge level and assisting students in their instruction is what we highly encourage. All right, the failure-free reading instructional process consists of 3 steps. The first step is teaching, where the students will participate in a teacher-guided instruction station. The next step is technology. The students will work at the computer through the failure-free reading online talking software. And then the final step is going to be reinforcement activities. There'll be paper and pencil activities. There'll be some fill-in-the-blank, some matching, word searches, some correcting sentence structure, answering factual and inferential questions in complete sentences. Those types of activities will be available through the reinforcement activities station. All right, this is a quick breakdown of the different levels of the failure-free reading program. The first portion of failure-free reading for grade levels 1 all the way up to 8 is going to be the elementary solution, or the Joseph's Readers program. The elementary solution is represented by color levels, red, green, orange, and teal, and those color levels represent corresponding grade levels. The red level is going to be first grade vocabulary and content. The green level is going to be second grade vocabulary and content. The orange level is going to be third grade vocabulary and content, and teal is going to represent grade levels 4th through 8th. Next is our Verbal Master program, and Verbal Master is going to be represented by levels 1, 2, 3, and 4, and those levels are going to correspond with grade relationships also. Verbal Master 1 is going to represent grades 6th through 7th, Verbal Master 2, grades 8th through 9th, Verbal Master 3, grades 10th and 11th, and Verbal Master 4 is going to be SAT or ACT prep. Verbal Master 4 is a great resource for students to build up to so that they can start preparing for the SAT or the ACT. So, like I said earlier, failure-free reading is still a fantastic resource for students who are reading above grade level or at grade level. So don't discount those students when you're talking to parents about the program and its effectiveness. Okay. Why would we start with the teacher-guided or the scripted teacher lesson? Scripted lessons ensure fidelity. They're going to eliminate teacher prep time, and they're going to create a failure-free environment. The scripted lesson allows for the facilitator and the student to know what to expect on a day-to-day basis. All lessons are scripted, but you don't have to adhere specifically to the script. The script just provides you with an outline. You can certainly deviate from the outline and kind of incorporate your own things, not just from the standpoint of instruction, but you can incorporate pictures and collages and a lot of different activities that you feel like would accent the lessons that you're trying to teach to the student. As long as you don't deviate from the methodology, this is just a skeleton, as Dr. Lockovich likes to call it. We certainly want you to feel comfortable incorporating some additional things that you think would help the student be more successful. All right. Why talking or ASL video software? The ASL video software is something that Failure Free Reading has made available for the deaf and the hearing impaired populations. So if you're looking to use this program with parents who have deaf students, it is going to be an excellent resource for those students as well. The ASL is still a work in progress, but it is a feature that is ahead of its time. We are one of the only curriculum programs that is offering ASL video software for students in reading at this time. But talking software or ASL software eliminates a reading proficiency requirement. It allows us to be able to work with students who have a 0.0 reading level or could be considered non-readers and help them start at the bottom and build that foundation. Talking software or ASL video software allows for more age-appropriate appearance and a more age-appropriate level of content. And it allows both hearing and deaf non-readers to work independently with that age-appropriate content. A lot of times students that are stuck at skills, as we like to call it, or students that are reading at the lowest grade levels, are far behind in reading, can't work independently. They need a lot of teacher assistance and a lot of teacher support. The use of talking software and ASL video allows these students to be able to work by themselves and get a sense of get a stronger sense of confidence and achievement from the ability to work independently. Okay? And why paper and pencil reinforcement activities? Paper and pencil reinforcement activities add to the time on task component. So you've got the student working with the teacher effectively in group time. You've got the teacher, or you've got the student working independently on the computer with their headphones, or through the use of the ASL video. And then we should have provided enough support from instruction so that the students can work independently on their reinforcement activities. A lot of times here again, the students that we work with consistently, they need a lot of help, a lot of support with the use of independent activities. Our goal is to provide them with enough instructional support so that they can move on to the independent activities and work through those activities by themselves. Here again, this promotes independence. We want to give students that feeling that they can work independently by themselves, that they do have what it takes to tackle the material that's being put in front of them. And it's a way to document success as the students move through these different activities, as they work through these pencil and paper resources. We are able to score their activity and show how far they've come, show how much of an understanding they have of this story that initially they had identified as being too difficult. Okay. Lastly, we're going to take a look at progress monitoring. So we took a look at the diagnostic assessment and the pretest, and we determined the entry points for students. We've talked a little bit about the instructional model and the different steps that are going to be taken to move students through the instructional process. Now we have an opportunity to look at some of the resources that we're going to use to track student progress and identify how well they're working through the program. First, we got the story cluster post-test. So the initial pretest that they took after the diagnostic assessment is going to provide us with that baseline data to give us a sense of how well the student understands a story. Or a cluster. Once they complete a story or a cluster, then they will take a post-test online that will reveal for us how effectively the instruction helped to develop their understanding of the story or cluster. Next will be the progress monitoring diagnostic, and we'll take a look at that, or we'll talk a little bit more about that in detail when we dive into the software and start taking a look at what the computer component is going to look like, what does the scripted teacher lesson look like. We'll kind of role play those a little bit and give you a little bit more of an understanding of how those work. But the progress monitoring diagnostic is similar to the initial assessment that the students use to identify their placement. I'll show you how to access this resource, but what it's going to do is it's going to provide the student with an assessment that starts at their challenge level, their previously identified challenge level. And it's going to allow the students to work their way up to a new challenge level. So let's say a student placed in the green level first story, which is going to be about a 1.5 to second grade story. When the student goes back to take the progress monitoring diagnostic, the assessment will begin at that story in the green level, and the student will have the opportunity to work through content to see if they have achieved a new challenge level. So it's a very effective way to determine whether or not students have shown any growth through the use of the program. And then the last thing that we take a look at is the abundant online reports. We've got school progress reports, detailed software lesson reports, student diagnostic prescriptive reports, student reading attitude adjustment survey reports. All of those reports are available through the use of the Failure-Free Reading program. They're available in the reporting feature, and they will serve as a great resource for parents to be able to determine how their students are doing as far as the Failure-Free Reading program is concerned. All right, what we want to do now is we want to take a look at the software. We'll walk through the diagnostic and just kind of what that looks like for the student to take the diagnostic prescriptive. We'll walk through the pretest. We will hopefully get a chance to see the green flag feature, and I'll show you how to deactivate that or accept the changes that are associated with that feature. Then we'll go into the teacher scripted lesson or the scripted teacher lesson. We'll take a brief look at the software. We'll look at the independent activities, and then we'll look at some of the progress monitoring and reporting features. After we do that, we're going to talk about the next steps for the process of you guys completing this course and being able to move on to start offering your tutoring services to the community. We'll talk about completing the refresher course quiz, which is going to come at the end of this course. We'll talk about setting your rates. We'll talk about recruiting your students and some of the things that you can do to do that successfully. And then we'll talk briefly about building or expanding your tutoring business. All right. In order to get started, both you and the parent will need to go to www.failurefree.com. And what we'll do right now before we dive into the software is we'll kind of walk through how you can help parents get registered for the home edition. As it has been explained in the Q&As that you've received, in order for you to offer tutoring to parents, parents are going to have to register for the Failure-Free Reading Home Edition. The Home Edition is a $49.99 month-to-month service. The parents can cancel at any time, and there's actually a 7-day free trial available for them to plug into the resource and kind of get started with your assistance. If parents want to go to the Home Edition site and register for their Failure-Free Reading Home Edition account, what they'll do is they'll click on the Home Edition link, which will take them to the Home Edition home page. When they're ready to move forward with an order, they can click the link that says Order Here Now. If they're still kind of getting familiar with the program and they want to kind of try it out with one of their students, then they'll want to click on the Try Us Now link. If they move the cursor to the picture and click on the picture, it will provide them with a pop-up box where they can go in and for about 20 minutes go through a sample lesson. And then that'll kind of give them an idea of whether or not this is going to be a beneficial resource for their students. Once they've decided that they're ready to move forward, they want to click on the Order Now link to order now. And it'll take them to a page that's going to give them kind of a cost analysis against other tutoring programs. And it shows that Failure-Free Reading is priced very affordably in relationship to a lot of other programs. There's also an abundance of research available on the effectiveness of the Failure-Free Reading program, and we can certainly make that available to your parents also. When they're ready to move forward, they will click on the Start Now link. And the Start Now link will take them to the page where they need to register their credit card information. And yes, in order to take advantage of the 7-day free trial, they're going to have to enter their credit card information. If they decide that they don't want to do the month-to-month membership anymore, then they will have to contact us specifically and let us know, and our contact information is available on the website. But once they register their credit card information, then they will be sent a confirmation to their email that will let them know that their payment has been approved, and it will allow them to go to a new page where they can provide us with the necessary email information, create their user login and their password so that they can begin working with the failure-free reading program with their child. And once that's complete, they're ready to go. And then you will work with the parent to set your own tutoring rates and the schedule for how you will connect with the parent and the student in order to provide your services. Once the parent has registered for the service, they will be provided with a user login and a password so that they can proceed with the use of the program. When you are working with the student and you want to access the software, you will come to the top of the page. You will enter the username for the student's account, which will usually be an email address. And then you will enter the password. All right. And entering that information will take you to your online classroom. Now, as you can see, we already have a student that is currently represented in the classroom. I am going to remove that student so that we can start the process from scratch. So now we have a nice, clean, clear online classroom, and we're ready to proceed. The very first thing that you're going to want to do in order to get started is you're going to want to enroll your student. All right. And we will call this student Michael Jordan. Okay. You'll want to enter the first name, last name, the correct gender, and the date of birth is very valuable. Now, I'm probably going to get this birth date wrong, and that's okay for Michael himself. But what's important to understand is that if ever you or the parent has questions about the student and some of the student's activity, it is easier for me as a consultant to answer questions for you if I understand things like the student's age, the student's current grade level. Just that little bit of information in and of itself, combined with taking a look at the student's activity, can tell me a lot about that student. So it's important that you enter as much information as possible. There is a button here to change instructional language from English to Spanish. What it does is it allows the program to provide the student or parent with Spanish instructions, but still teach English language. And it's a resource that is currently seldom used. A lot of ELL teachers just keep everything moving in English, you know, instructions and all, and their students are having a lot of success. So it's a testament to the point that exposure, that constant exposure to English language is what helps these students to become more successful. But it's important to note that the resource is there, it is available. If you're working with Spanish-speaking parents and students that would need that support in the beginning to kind of get going. Okay? Here you're going to see the question, would you like to diagnose this student now? You want to leave the button no, because the diagnostic prescriptive is actually going to diagnose the student here in just a little bit. Down below, we've got some subgroup data: race, special education status, free or reduced lunch, limited English proficiency. Again, the more detailed information that you can provide, the better. If this is something that a parent wants to share with the student's teacher at some point, then this information could be added to the student's IEP to show their participation in a program outside of school in order to help develop their skills. And all of that detailed information would be very valuable. All right, and lastly, we've got the independent student access area. There is a code here that the student can use to access the student login page. Because each of these accounts is pretty much specific to a student, it's not a resource that I think you'll have to use very often unless a parent has multiple children that he or she wants to work with the failure-free reading program. But we will talk about it briefly. As we navigate the program, we won't use that student login resource. I will provide you with a quick step guide that will walk you through that resource a little bit, and if you have any questions, you're welcome to email me or give me a call here at the home office, and I'll be happy to answer those questions for you on that particular issue. But the independent student access code can be changed, and it's highly recommended that you change the code for that student, simply because you want it to be something easy that the student can remember. So we'll plug in an easy-to-remember code, and we'll determine at a later date if we're going to try to navigate that student login resource. Once you've completed all the information, or once you've entered all the necessary information, you want to save, as I did in haste. I apologize. But you want to make sure you save all the students' information. And as you can see, Michael Jordan is now a student in our online classroom, and Michael Jordan is already bookmarked to the diagnostic prescriptive, so he's ready to begin the assessment process. In order to get Michael Jordan started with the assessment, we're going to click inside the bubble next to his name, and we're going to launch the lesson. We're going to go ahead and move forward to begin instruction with Michael Jordan and find out where he's going to place inside of the failure-free reading program based on a story or cluster that represents the challenge level for him.
You must select the language by clicking on the English or Spanish button before you can continue.
Usted debe seleccionar un idioma pulsando el botón de inglés o español para poder continuar.
Click on this button if you'd like to hear the diagnostic prescriptive directions in English.
All right. And this is going to allow us to see that there are multiple instructional languages available. Again, you've got the English here.
Pulse este botón si usted desea escuchar en español las instrucciones para el programa de evaluación.
And you have the Spanish-speaking instructional language there. You're welcome to use those resources. Those resources are available for you to help your students. I just want to turn the volume up here a little bit. There we go. But most of the time, facilitators and parents are going to work with the English instruction.
Click on this. In this section, you will be asked several questions. Just relax and don't be afraid to make mistakes. You'll do just fine. A sentence will appear in this box on the top of the screen. There will be a blank space in the sentence. You should read the sentence and use the mouse to click on the answer that best completes the sentence. After you have selected your answer, press the arrow to continue. If these directions make sense to you, press the green arrow to continue. Otherwise, press the question mark button to hear the directions again.
Okay, so the directions are clearly provided for the facilitator and the student. Now, at this point, there won't be any more audio support provided for the student. This is an assessment, so we want to get a real sense of how well the student can work with this material.
Please read the sentence and select the answer that best finishes the sentence.
And we're going to go through and we're going to get a couple of these answers correct. And then as we move through the process, I'll start to get questions incorrect consistently so we're able to move forward in the interest of time. All right. This is what I like to call the corner click technique. It's a technique that some students use in order to get through assessments quickly because they've taken a lot of assessments and they haven't had a lot of success, so they get frustrated easily and they just want to get it over with. And you may see some students kind of approach the assessment like that. You definitely want to monitor their assessment activity to make sure that they're giving it their best effort. because in order for us to help them to become successful, we need to get an accurate sense of where their current reading level is. The green flag feature that I mentioned earlier certainly serves to assist in regulating that process and making sure that the students are being effectively challenged. But at the end of the day, we've just got to do the best that we can to encourage the students to try their hardest.
Welcome to Joseph's Readers Pre- and Post-Testing. In a few minutes, I'm going to ask you to answer a few questions. The questions will help to determine whether this story is suitable for you. Don't be nervous. You'll do just fine.
Click on the word to find the best answer. Click on the OK box to record your choice.
All right, so we went through the diagnostic assessment process, and based on the results of the assessment, the student has placed in the first story of the green level, and that is characteristic of the green trim that you see in the background. I know that the diagnostic also provided you with a green window, but that's the traditional color of the diagnostic assessment. Once the student moves into the pretest, you'll be able to see based on the color what particular level the student is placed in. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to answer all of these questions correctly, and hopefully as a result we will see the green flag feature pop up so that we can talk about that a little bit. All right, and I have now completed the pretest. So it says here your score has been saved. You have completed this pretest. Please talk with your teacher in order to continue. So we're going to quit here, and then we'll refresh our screen. And once we've refreshed our screen, we see that Michael Jordan has been green flagged. And what the green flag means is that Michael has done too well on the pretest, and we need to look at the possibility of moving Michael's placement to a higher level story. All right, so what we're going to do is we're going to click inside the bubble next to Michael's name, and we'll see that a dialog box pops up. And the dialog box reads, "This student's high score on the story pretest just completed indicates that he or she may have placed at too low a level and is not sufficiently challenged. To move this student up to the next placement level, accept and change the bookmarks as specified below, or do nothing and let this student work at the current level." So we see that the options for the student currently are the Joseph's Readers green level, which is where Michael Jordan currently is, and the program is recommending that we bump Michael up to the orange level, story 1. If we wanted to accept this recommendation, we would just click accept and change the bookmark, and the program would do so. In some cases, when we're working with a student that's working at pretty low levels, a facilitator or a parent may choose to keep that student at that current placement, and it's a situational thing. Sometimes it may be a good idea, sometimes it may not be, but we want to leave that at the discretion of the facilitator. You've gone through the training. Most of you are licensed teachers. We trust your judgment. We want to leave that up to you and leave that up to the parent to kind of determine what the next most effective move is going to be for the student. What I want to show you is the resource that you will need to use in order to keep the bookmark where it is. If you click on the link that says do nothing and keep this student at current level, it's not going to deactivate the green flag. And if it doesn't deactivate the green flag, it could restrict some of the students' participation in the use of the program. So we want to click here to view details for selected student. And then we want to go down to where we see instructional history. Underneath instructional history, you'll see a status. Next to the status, it'll show you the green flag and then a link to clear the green flag. So we're going to use that link right now to clear the green flag, but we're ultimately going to go ahead and change the student's placement anyway. I just want to show you how this clear green flag resource works, and then it'll also open the door for me to show you how our edit bookmark feature works. So I'm clearing the green flag. We're going to keep Michael Jordan at the placement level that he's in right now, and when we go to our class view, we notice that the green flag is gone and Michael Jordan has remained at the green level story 1, which is the farm visit. All right, but if we decided, outside of the parameters of the green flag resource that we wanted to change Michael Jordan's placement, we would do that using the edit bookmark resource. And we would also use the edit bookmark resource to place students into the progress monitoring diagnostic assessment that I talked about earlier. In order to do that, we're going to click on the edit bookmark link, and another dialog box is going to pop up. And inside that box, you will see the diagnostic, which is going to be your progress monitoring diagnostic resource, Joseph's Readers, or the elementary solution, which is your color levels, red, green, orange, and teal. Life skills is something that we haven't talked about. It's a component of failure-free reading that's designed for older students that may be special diploma students or cognitively challenged, low literacy adults. The students will not be placed into life skills through the process of the diagnostic. It's its own independent resource. It's something that I don't think the parents will have access to life skills unless they specifically request it. If you are going to be working with parents who have older students, or if you're going to be working with some cognitively challenged adults, or just adults that are just non-readers, the Life Skills program provides a lot of realistic adult-level content for your students. It's still the same failure-free reading methodology, but the content is incredible. We've got job skills content. We've got independent living, getting an apartment content, drug prevention content, getting your driver's license, those sorts of things that apply to real adult living. And then finally over here to the far right, you see the Verbal Master program, which is included in the different entry points that the students may access through the use of the diagnostic assessment. But for right now, we're going to take Michael Jordan through the Joseph's Readers program. We want to select Joseph's Readers orange level, going on a train ride. And we're not going to go back to the pretest. If you were to have accepted the recommendation of the program through the green flag feature, it would have placed you at another pretest, because again, the pretest is what is the tool that the system uses automatically to determine if a student is appropriately placed. We are not going to do that for the sake of this instructional video, but in the real environment, you do want to provide the student with a pretest because you want to make sure that the story that he or she is working on is going to be the appropriate challenge level. But we're going to click on Lesson 1, and we're going to go to the pre-teaching lesson. And what I want you to see before we move forward, because we won't have time to go through all of these when we're working with the software, I want you to see that there are 4 different areas of the software that a student will work through. The pre-teaching is going to introduce vocabulary, review the meaning of that vocabulary, and help the student to build a background of understanding with that key vocabulary. And then there's also going to be introduction of the passage, modeling of the reading of the passage, and some discussion about what's taking place in the story. The talking book is exactly that. It's a very short opportunity for the program to read the passage to the student, and then the student to review the passage, and then the student will move on to word recognition activities and word reinforcement activities. Reinforcement activities. Once you've made your necessary selections, Joseph's Readers orange level, going on a train ride, Lesson 1, pre-teaching lesson, we're going to save. The program will provide us with a dialog box. We want to click OK. And all of these are just making sure that you know that these changes have been made before you continue. All right. And again, we just took a look at the Edit Bookmark feature. That's a resource that you want to use to change student placement if you feel it is necessary. All right, when we go back to the class view, we're going to see that Michael Jordan is now placed at Joseph Reeder's Orange level, Story 1, going on a train ride, Lesson 1 of 10. And the very first activity inside of the software will be the pre-teaching lesson. All right, before we move on to the software, we want to go through the scripted teacher lesson. The beauty of the Failure-Free Reading resource, especially for you as tutors, is that all of the materials and information that you will need can be found in your electronic library. The electronic library can be found inside of the Teacher Tools box, and in order to access it, you'll just click this link. All right. Once you have selected the electronic library, you'll see a variety of selections from Joseph's Readers to Verbal Master Print, Life Skills Print. There's a Reading Attitude Adjustment Survey, and then Secondary Library Print. The Secondary Library is a combination of Joseph's Readers and Verbal Master. It just eliminates the first two levels. But for now, we want to go into the Joseph's Readers Print Library. And all of the materials that we'll be looking for this student are going to fall under the orange level, going on a train ride. Okay? For the scripted teacher lesson, you're going to need two items. You're going to need your teacher's manual and your instructional reader. The instructional reader is the resource that students will use to do some of their own independent reading during the group time. But we'll pull the teacher's manual first. And remember, all of the teaching resources are scripted, so even if you've never taken a look at this resource a day in your life, you'll be able to effectively begin instruction with students because everything that you need in order to get started is right there for you. Okay? I'm going to take you through the process using the script, but remember, once you get comfortable with this process, you won't have to use the script. You'll be able to kind of improv with some of your own thoughts and your own terminology, but we want to stay consistent with the methodology. Every activity inside of this pre-teaching lesson or this scripted teacher lesson is very important. So don't ignore the activities. You can just provide a little bit of variety for your narratives. Today we are going to read a story about a person going on a train ride. Let's listen as this person describes the train trip he is about to take. You are going to be introduced to many words in this story. You might know some of these words. If you do, that's just great, but if you don't know any of these words, don't worry. You'll be able to read this anyway. Trust me, you're going to do quite well. Just relax. Let's go over a few of these words. Don't be afraid to tell me that you are not sure what some of these words mean. That is why I'm here, to help. Remember, it is impossible to read something you don't understand, so please ask me to explain any word you are not sure of. All right? Are you ready? Then let's begin. What does the word train mean? And you will provide these explanations and you will go through this process with each individual vocabulary word. You want to give the student the opportunity to provide you with the definition of the word train or a synonym for the word train. And once the student has done that, if they were incorrect, then you just want to provide them with a very neutral response. You know, that was a great try, but that's not exactly what we're looking for. And then you want to go into an explanation of what a train is. If you have pictures available, that will be fantastic. We don't provide them, but what I would encourage and what is pretty much mandatory for the introduction of vocabulary through this part of the lesson is that you have the word train written on an index card or you use one of the flashcards that's available in your electronic library. And then you will go through that same activity with these remaining vocabulary words, and then you'll move on to the listening exercises. Okay. Please listen as I read the first part of the story aloud. I am going on a train ride. I am going on a train ride by myself. I am going on a train ride by myself to visit my grandmother and my grandfather. I often encourage facilitators and teachers to read the passage twice because usually the first time the student's not being very attentive and you just need to be able to follow up with a little bit of a refresher. Once you have provided the student with an opportunity to hear the passage, now you're going to go into the presenting activities. Let's spend a few minutes talking about what we have just learned about the story. What is the person going to do? And based on what we read in the passage, we know that the person is going on a train ride. And where is the person going? the person is going to visit their grandmother and their grandfather. So those are factual questions that the student should be able to pull out of the passage based on what they've heard, and it's okay for you to help them if they are kind of feeling lost or they're a little confused about what's going on. A lot of times that confusion simply stems from a little bit of anxiety. Students are used to getting the wrong answer and being penalized for that. We want to create an environment where getting the wrong answer is not a bad thing. It just opens up the door for us to understand the right answer. After you've completed the factual questions, we'll move into the inferential questions. Number one, why do you think the person is going to visit his grandparents? And number two, how do you think the person feels about going alone? The inferential questions are extremely beneficial because they open the door for discussion. These are going to be the resources that will allow for you to have more interaction with a student, and it'll help the student to open up and be willing to share and exchange his or her ideas. I love inferential questions. They're my favorite part of the scripted teaching activities. All right. Then next we'll go into the leading exercises. And in leading exercises, you will read the sentence, and then you will leave room for the student to kind of fill in the blank, so to speak. Let's go over what we know about the story. I am going on a train, and then the student would fill in the word ride. That's right. I'm going on a ride. I'm going on a train ride. I am going on a train ride by, and then the student would fill in myself. And if the students don't chime in with the appropriate vocabulary word, you are welcome to assist them and help them fill in. We're not looking for mastery in the scripted teacher lesson. We're just looking to expose the student to information that they'll be reviewing through the computer. That's great. I'm going on a train ride by myself. I am going on a train ride by myself to visit my grandmother and my grandfather. Good. I'm going on a train ride by myself to visit my grandmother and my grandfather. Once you have completed the leading exercises, then it's time to transition into the reading. And basically what happens in the reading is you will create opportunities to model sentences and passages to the students again, but at this point they will receive their instructional readers, and they will be reading aloud also. So let's take a brief moment to pull up the instructional reader so that we'll see what that looks like. Okay. So this is the instructional reader. Basically, it's the book without any illustrations, and it'll provide the students with the passage. The beauty of the instructional reader and the beauty of this process overall is that the students will go back and review the passages from the previous day after they've learned the new passage for the day. So it creates a scaffolding effect. This is going to be lesson 1 or day 1, and then on lesson 2 they will learn a new passage, which will be the passage on the bottom, and then they'll go back and review the previous passage and the content that's associated with the previous passage. And then it just continues to build to where you see day 3, there are 5 people in my family would be the lesson for the day, but then when it comes time for review, the teacher would have the students go back and reread all 3 passages and so on and so forth, and you can see how it builds and builds and builds. And before we know it, the student has gone from one passage, one simple passage, to 5 passages or more. So it's really exciting, and it's the power of just that scaffolding, that incremental process of helping students to develop their skills and their reading stamina. All right, if I can get back to the tab. It's now time for you to read the story. The story is identical to what we have talked about. If you want me to read the sentences first, I will. If you don't remember a word, I will tell it to you. Don't be nervous. Reading is nothing more than thinking about what the story is about and trying to guess or anticipate what you think is going to come next. Remember, the key is having the material make sense. Stop reading if it doesn't make sense. Ask me to help. Are you ready? Watch as I read the first sentence aloud. And so you, as the facilitator, will have to go back up to where you saw the passage earlier, and you'll have to reference that passage in order to read. The students will be reading from their instructional readers. And there are a variety of different ways that you can read. You can do popcorn reading, you can do choral reading, you can do peer-to-peer reading. One of the things I highly encourage any opportunity students have to work peer-to-peer, I think, is extremely beneficial. So once the students have gone through the process of reading and reviewing the passage for the day, then part of your review is going to be going back and reading over the passages that you've read for the previous days, okay? And I know that some of you are looking here where it says, now let's try some written work. I am typically going to discourage that. It'll kind of depend on the time frame and the schedule that you have with your parents. What I like to do is I like to go through the scripted teacher lesson and then take students into the software. I like to give them multiple exposures to instruction before I give them the independent activities. All right, here are a couple of notes to the instructor. You want to talk about the concept of going alone on a visit, which is directly related to the story, and it creates the opportunity for transfer to occur. Now we've taken the student from the story and we are allowing them to relate this story to something that they could experience in their real life. And then number two, talk about the different ways people refer to their grandparents, which is a very important conversation, especially for lower literacy students. They use the word grandma or grandpa or nana all the time, but they may not necessarily be able to identify that word or read that word in text. And then it creates the opportunity for you to have that discussion about what they may call their grandparents and what's appropriate, what's not appropriate in terms of what they would see in the text. Maybe they wouldn't see Nana or Graham, they would see Grandma or Grandpa. So those will be very valuable discussions to help students build relationships with those vocabulary words. All right, and that is the scripted teacher lesson. Once we have completed the scripted teacher lesson, it'll be time for us to move into the software. So we'll go back to our class view. And we know that Michael Jordan is positioned and ready to go. He's already booked to lesson 1 of 10 for the pre-teaching lesson. And the pre-teaching lesson is going to introduce probably about 8 to 10 vocabulary words, so we won't go through the entire process. But I just want to give you a sense of what the software looks like. You will have the ability to go on our main page, and I'll give you that URL right now. It's going to be www.failurefreeonline.com, and you'll be able to register for a 2-week free trial evaluation. That'll give you an opportunity as the tutor to kind of familiarize yourself with the resource so that you'll have a stronger sense of what you're doing when you start introducing this resource to parents. And that will allow you to create a student and kind of play around with the software and become more familiar with it, so you'll be well versed in using it when you're working with the parents and the students particularly. All right, so if we want to get Michael Jordan started with the software, we want to click inside that bubble and we want to launch the lesson. And now you're going to see where the student has the choice of without subtitles, subtitles, or ASL video subtitles. The last two are going to be available for students that are deaf or hearing impaired. Those are the resources that we provide to that environment so that those students can work as independently as possible. Again, they're still a work in progress, but they're excellent resources, and currently Failure Free Reading is the only program that is offering ASL video subtitles for deaf or hearing impaired students. All right. And what we decided was to leave the resource without subtitles and go ahead and launch.
Welcome to the Joseph's Readers pre-teaching lesson. The pre-teaching lesson is used to show you the words that you will see in this part of the story. We will introduce the words to you, define them, and spell them. Becoming familiar with these words will help you improve your language, and improving your language will help you become a better reader.
The first important vocabulary word for this story is
train.
T-R-A-I-N.
Train. A connected row of railroad cars. Please click on the forward arrow to continue with this lesson.
Or the next important vocabulary word is
grandmother.
G-R-A-N-D-M-O-T-H-E-R.
mother. A grandmother is a woman. Please click on the forward arrow to continue with this lesson, or click on the backward arrow to hear this word again.
So this is what the students are going to see when they're inside the failure-free reading software as it relates to the Joseph's Readers or the elementary solution. The Verbal Master resource will look a little bit different. Again, that's something that you'll be able to play around with once you get access to a trial account.
The next important vocabulary word is grandfather. G-R-A-N-D-F-A-T-H-E-R. Grandfather. The father of your father or mother. A grandfather is a man. Please click on the forward arrow to continue with this lesson. The next important vocabulary word is myself. M-Y-S-E-L-F. Myself. Alone. To do something with no one's help. Please click on the forward arrow.
We'll take a look at one more.
The vocabulary word is ride. R-I-D-E. Ride. To be in or on something that is moving. Please click on the forward arrow to continue with this lesson, or click on the backward arrow to hear this word again.
All right, and we'll go ahead and close this out, but that is going to be a little bit of that's part of the pre-teaching lesson for what your students will work with on the computer once they've had access to the software. Okay? Now that we've taken a look at the diagnostic assessment and the pretest, we've gone through the scripted teacher lesson, and we've taken a look at the software and what it will look like for students to work through the software. Now we will take a look at the pencil and paper reinforcement activities, and we will briefly go through reporting. From there, we will wrap it up by showing you what's next and talking a little bit more about the process of setting up your tutoring business. In order to access the independent activities, we're going to go back to your electronic library. We're going to go back to Joseph's Readers Print. And we're going to go down to independent activities. Now, there is something that I want you to pay attention to. There are writing activities available for the orange and the teal program, so that's really important. Those are valuable resources that will complement the independent activities for students that are a little bit more advanced and ready to move into something more challenging. But we're going to click on the independent activities, and we'll just kind of walk through those briefly. There are usually going to be about 9 activities for each level, and here's the kind of a description, an introduction narrative to the activities packet. The student independent activity packet was created to give severely reading disabled students something that they've never had, an opportunity to work independently with age-appropriate materials. Then the narrative will just kind of go on to explain a little bit of the process and the resource. You've got the name of the story here, Lesson 1, and then you'll get to see some of the activities. You might have to turn your head a little bit in order to get an effective view. But this is going to be fill in the blank. This will be the first activity inside of your independent activities packet. And this will be fill in the blank with single words. The next activity will be fill in the blank with phrases. And I would encourage you to have the students write the answer in the blank instead of just writing the letter associated with the answer. This is an opportunity to help those students improve their writing skills. Here is an ABC order exercise. It's broken down into 2 sections, so it's not too overwhelming. And the alphabet is going to be provided in lowercase on the left-hand side, uppercase at the top. Next is going to be the sentence scramble activity. The student has to unscramble the sentence and rewrite the sentence with the correct capitalization and punctuation. And then here is a matching exercise, and here you just want to have the student to draw a line from the sentence to the appropriate word or phrase. I am going on, and the answer would be A train ride. So the student would just draw a line from I am going on to the train ride, to a train ride. Okay? Now we've got sentence illustration for the first lesson. And down here you'll see the passage, and it may be the full passage or it may just be a portion of the passage. I am going on a train ride. I'm going on a train ride by myself. I am going on a train ride by myself to visit my grandmother and my grandfather. And the goal is for the student to create an illustration based on that passage. Here, we've got word illustration, so the word train is provided. We'd like to see the student draw us a picture of a train. It doesn't have to be perfect. There can be stick figures. And then here is a portrait of myself. We want to have the student to draw an illustration of themselves. Pictures are a powerful way to get a sense for a student's reality. So we don't want to discourage these. Sometimes the girls tend to like the illustration activities more than the boys do. But you've got some great artists out there. This may be an opportunity for us to see some of their hidden artistic talent. So we want to encourage every activity that you have time for. If you are allotted a certain period of time to work with a student, then perhaps you can leave any activities that you don't complete for homework. Maybe you want to pull out 3 activities that you really want to work with the student on, and I can always share with you the activities that are my favorite. And then anything that's not completed during that tutoring time, you can have the student to complete after hours, on their own time when you're not working with them. Here is the word search. And I love this activity not just because I love word searches. There's only about 4 vocabulary words represented here for the student to work through the word search. But what a teacher introduced to me recently was that she was encouraging her students, after they found the initial 4 words available in the word search, she was encouraging her students to go through the word search to see if there were other words hidden in the word search that the student could identify. And it's really turned out to be a fun, kind of a fun activity. You'll see the word arm right here. You can also see the word art spelled backwards. You see the word hog, the word hot, the name Amy, the word self. So there are a ton, the word walk. So there are a ton of different words hidden in these word searches that aren't available down here in the actual key. And I think it's a great opportunity for students to improve their word recognition skills. If they can see those words hidden, forwards and backwards, horizontally, diagonally, inside of a word search, they'll have that stronger ability to recognize those words in text, and it'll help with the development of that automatic reader component. And then lastly is one of my favorite activities. It's answering questions using complete sentences, and the student can refer to the paragraph for help or the passage for help. The first question in this particular activity is factual, and then the next 2 are going to be inferential. Again, you want the students to use correct capitalization and punctuation in order to rewrite the sentence, and it allows for them to A, pull factual information straight from the passage in order to answer the first question, but B, it teaches them to write a little bit creatively in terms of what their thought process is specific to the subject matter or the context of the passage. Why do you think the person is going to visit his grandparents? This is something that they can pull from the scripted teacher lesson that you've reviewed with them, where you had a little bit of dialogue regarding this particular question. They can pull from that and learn how to take that from a dialogue where they're just talking with you about it, and how to, take pencil and piece of paper and actually communicate that through writing. So I think those are very, very beneficial activities for the students to use to reinforce what they've learned through the instruction. This particular activity is one of my top 3. I would also recommend, of course, the word search. So we'll have a top 4. I love the word search, especially if you encourage the students to incorporate or identify as many words as they can inside the word search. I found a lot today. I was pretty excited about that. And I also like the fill-in-the-blank activities, whether you use the use the first one, which is just words, or the second one, which is phrases. And I love the unscrambling sentences activity and having to write those sentences with capitalization and punctuation. I think that's a good challenge. Both this activity and the answer the question and complete sentences activity, I think, will need to be modeled in the beginning so that the student gets a clear understanding of what your expectations are. But I think the student will find a lot of confidence in being able to take advantage of those types of activities, him or herself, once they become more familiar with the process and have had a little bit of success. So those are the independent activities that can be found in your electronic library. We'll go back to our class view. And now let's briefly take a look at the reporting features. And just remember that once a student has worked through all of the lessons in a story, and you know, the lowest level, the lowest story in our program is the red level. It may be the red level eating lunch or going to the park. It's only 5 lessons, so it doesn't take that long to complete. There are stories in the teal level that go up to 12 lessons. So once the student has completed a story, they'll do a comprehension review, and then they'll do the post-test for the story, which will be very similar to the pre-test they completed at the very beginning after the diagnostic assessment. So after the student has completed all of their activities and they've completed the post-test, it'll be good to take a look at the reports and just sort of see what type of results that we've gotten from student activity. Okay? There are plenty of reports here for you to review, but some of the ones that I think are very valuable, you've got a student progress report for multiple stories. We'll take a look at a sample of that just so you can kind of get a sense for what type of information that'll display. So as the student is working through pre- and post-test, it'll provide you with those pre- and post-test scores and whatever the percentage of growth is, whether it's, you know, we hope it's positive growth, and more often than not it is positive growth. That'll be reflected here along with the student's time on task. That'll be for Joseph's readers, and then it'll also reflect the different stories that the student has read, the number of lessons completed, the number of new vocabulary words that a student has been introduced to. It'll review the time on task, and that's going to be specific to the software. The time on task doesn't include how much time you spent with the teacher doing the scripted teacher lesson. And then it's also going to display some of the vocabulary words that the student has learned down here at the bottom. So it's a very detailed report, provides you a lot of different information, a lot of different levels of the program. Here's a look at Verbal Master. I definitely wanted to show you that. Some of the different components of Verbal Master for the pre- and post-test. It'll show you all that data. And Verbal Master also includes cluster stories, and this is an incredible resource for some of our secondary students that are a little bit older. It's definitely a more advanced resource for students that have been considered non-readers. It's very, very powerful. It'll definitely help with that increasing a student's reading volume rate. And it is available on the software and does come with its own fill-in-the-blank and comprehension exercises. And so all of that data is provided and will also be provided in the form of a very pretty chart. So that is the student progress resource. There's a detailed software lesson report. This is one of my favorite ones because it's going to show you all of the detailed activity for the student as the student has worked through the software, from the pre- and post-test to the actual activities, the reading comprehension exercise. Everywhere where you see things highlighted in bold print, it means that that the student got the answer incorrect, and it may have taken a couple of tries before the student arrived at the correct answer. Just to kind of browse through here and show you a couple of different additional activities. All of this is going to be included in the detailed software lesson report. That's a very thorough report for you to go through and see where a student may or may not be having challenges. And, of course, your access to this information will be, you'll have to negotiate with the parent on that, but I don't see a reason why a parent wouldn't want you to be able to access the student's reporting and information so that you can better assist the student in having success. Okay? The Student Diagnostic Prescriptive Report, this is going to be the resource that you use to track students' growth according to the initial diagnostic assessment and any progress monitoring assessments that the student may take. If the student has taken a progress monitoring assessment and scored higher on that assessment, let's say that the first assessment took place on August the 8th, 2007, well, maybe the student took another assessment in October of 2007. And based on that assessment and the activities that the student's been doing and the growth that that student has achieved, as opposed to placing at grade level 1 and scoring 30%, perhaps the student has now worked their way up a grade level to 2.0 and their new score was 50%. That would be represented down here there would be a bar in between this date and the student's name and information that would reflect the new score and the new information that was developed as a result of that new score. So that's how the progress monitoring diagnostic works, and that's how the reporting for the progress monitoring works. And it's awesome to watch students work through the program over a number of consecutive months and see how dramatic the growth is from when they first started to when they really kind of dug deep into the program. And you're going to notice that a lot of students have some dramatic growth in the first couple of months because they're being introduced to a resource that speaks to their strengths. For the first time, they actually are going to get the sense that they can be successful. And you'll be amazed at what students can and will do when they see that opportunity to be a success. All right. So we've taken a look at the scripted teacher lesson. We've looked at the software. We've looked at the independent activities, and we've taken a brief look at reporting. So those are the major components of using the software and providing instruction to students as a tutor out there in the tutoring environment. Let's go back to the slide presentation and just kind of talk about what some of the next steps are for you as a tutor out there working with parents through the use of the Failure-Free Reading program. All right. So what's next? Once you've completed the refresher course, there's going to be a quiz. After you complete the quiz, then you're going to get a certificate letting you know that you have completed the Failure-Free Reading refresher course. You'll, if you haven't already set rates, if you're not already actively tutoring and Failure-Free Reading is the first resource you've identified as a resource that you want to use to provide tutoring services, then you're going to set your rates. You're going to recruit your students by talking to parents, and then we'll give you a couple of bullet points for how to build and expand your tutoring business. Okay? Our research has shown that $25 per hour is a consistent average for tutoring rates. However, tutoring rates will ultimately be based on factors such as tutoring credentials and comparison of tutoring rates in your local area. And by tutor's credentials, we mean, do you have a 4-year degree? Do you have an associate's degree? Do you have a master's degree? Are you a teacher? What are some of the things that qualify you or certify you as a tutor? You can certainly be a tutor without having an extensive educational background, but those are things that you can use to negotiate a higher price point as a tutor. Online research is recommended, so we definitely recommend that you go out and you do your own research, as well as any information that you can gather from local tutoring agencies and community centers in your area. Here are a couple of websites that will pop up when you reference Google, and I've taken a look at these websites briefly. I think they provide you with some great information. I think these two websites are a good starting point, so I'll give you an opportunity to jot those down. And basically what you need to know is care.com, and Suite 101. If you go to Google and just type in tutoring rates, these two websites should be two of the first to pop up. All right. We'll talk about recruiting your students by talking to parents. Failure-free reading will be providing resources for both tutors and parents as a public service on our public home edition website, one of which will be a flyer that you can share with parents about failure-free reading in order to promote your tutoring business. And so that will be available on the tutor website. We're gonna encourage you to promote your business by putting up flyers and talking with parents, community members, and administrators at some of the following locations. Churches are great. Recreation centers, including the Boys and Girls Clubs and the YMCA. Schools, talk to teachers at your student school about failure-free reading. Doctors' offices, and you definitely want to share with family and friends. This is a great resource, an incredible program, especially for students that are having a tough time with reading. Okay. Building your tutoring business. We want you to become a part of the Failure-Free Reading Tutor Parent Network and offer your own personal tutoring services to parents at your determined rates or your predetermined rates. Basically, what we are doing as a company is we want to be able to bring parents to our website, and as we're bringing parents to our website, we would like to have a network of tutors that we know are out there in the community providing tutoring services to parents. And you specifically will be tutors that have received a certificate letting people know that you have completed training through the Failure-Free Reading program. You are familiar with our resource. You do have some experience in administering or facilitating the Failure-Free Reading program with students. So it gives you a little bit more credibility, and it creates a social network of sorts for you, which is why it was important for you to provide us with your zip code and your email address. That way parents can contact you if they're interested in receiving services from you, and that's business that comes to you. That's not necessarily business that you have to go out and find. So if we can provide that resource to you, we're really excited about that. You want to build your tutoring business by recruiting students and hiring tutors to serve those students. So these are different options, okay? And I didn't preface that before. The first option is you as a tutor just kind of in a one-to-one or one-to-three relationship, talking with a few parents and providing some tutoring services at your predetermined rate. But if you want to create more of an enterprise for yourself, then what you do is you build your own tutoring business by recruiting students, and then you want to hire teachers to serve those students. So you, as the tutoring service provider, aren't exactly providing the services. You're the liaison. You've got a staff of tutors that work with you, and you are going out and talking with parents, talking with businesses, and you're bringing large numbers of students into your tutoring environment and having your tutors work with those students. There may not be a lot of tutors who feel comfortable with talking to parents in order to recruit students, but they do have a passion for teaching. A manager or a recruiter could leverage his or her time by employing tutors to tutor while the manager goes out and expands the tutoring business. Just to kind of reemphasize, there are going to be some of you who are not interested in recruiting parents and students, but you would like to tutor. And so the goal would be for you to partner with someone who is more interested in growing something larger and having tutors in place to provide those services. There's great money in the business of tutoring on both sides of the equation. It just kind of depends on how much responsibility you want to have and how much time and energy you want to put into it. Your focus ultimately is sharing information with parents about failure-free reading along with any other programs that you may be working with, but you want to share information with failure-free reading and let them know that you are interested in tutoring their child with the use of our program through the online classroom inside of the home edition. The parents will have to register for the service at $49.99 per month, and it's a month-to-month payment from their credit or debit card. Once the parent registers for their account, they will pay you for your services separately based on a rate that you have agreed to. So if you remember me taking you to the Home Edition website and having you register for the Home Edition through that website, that is what the parent will do with their own credit card and debit card. So that's a payment that will come to failure-free reading. And then the rates that you charge for tutoring will be a separate transaction. That'll be something that you deal with the parent one-to-one. Okay? And then, of course, getting parents set up with the Failure-Free Reading Home Edition. The Home Edition of Failure-Free Reading is where parents will need to go in order to pay for access to the program for their students. The Home Edition can be accessed by going to www.failurefree.com and selecting the link that reads Home Edition to the right. Parents will click on that link to the top right-hand portion of the page that reads Order Now, and they will be taken to a page where they can register for the 7-day free trial. This free trial will require that the parent enter their credit card information, and once it's completed, the parents will receive user information that they will then make available to you, the tutor, for tutoring purposes. I highly encourage you to try to sit with parents and do this with them. This opens the door for more of a tutor-parent relationship, and then that's the opportunity where the parents will release control of the account to you in order for you to provide the services to the student. You got to remember the relationship with the parent is between the parent and Failure-Free, and then there's a relationship between you and the parent. So if the parent doesn't want to give you full access to the software, the parent has that right. The parent may very well want you to work with the student on the scripted teacher instruction and some of the independent reinforcement activities, and then they may choose to work with the student, on the software at home. You just have to remember that the access to the software is the possession of the parent, and so they can give you as much or as little flexibility as they like. Certainly respect that, and as long as the parent wants to work with you and wants to take advantage of your tutoring services, you just enjoy it and enjoy providing a great service and also being compensated for it. Okay? If you have any additional questions, you are welcome to contact me here at the home office by phone. This does conclude the refresher course. My number here at the home office is 1-800-542-2170, and then you've got my email address there, jamal.evans@failurefree.com. My contact information is also available on the tutor website, so if you need to reference the tutor website again, if you go to Contact Us, it will provide you with my information. I will be happy to assist you. And we will be progressively making support resources available to all tutors and parents on our public Failure-Free Reading Home Edition website. We thank you very much for giving us the opportunity to work with you, and we're excited to help you to get started with your tutoring business. Thank you very much for your time.